Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets and Google Apps Script project in Practical Sheets. Today I'm going to do a very special project. I'm going to show you how to use your codes in one, two, multiple sheets, all the sheets, all but one sheet. Many scenarios we're going to work on. We're going to do the example with a timestamp, but you could do this with your drop-downs, with any code you have that you are struggling to make it work in more than one sheet. So we're going to do many examples when the code will work in only one sheet, in only two sheets, in all the sheets, but this one that maybe you don't want it here, or you could specify the names of the sheets where you do want to work or where you don't want it to work. And even crazier, because in most of the examples, you need for it to be in the same column. For example, if you're going to do a drop down, you need that if you say that it's going to work in all the sheets or in these 4 sheets, then the column where the drop down is going to work has to be the same in all the 5 or 4 sheets. However, we're going to do a variation that you could also specify. For example, you say, okay, in sheet 1, I want that my column where the drop down works is column 1. In sheet 2, I want that the column where it works is column 6. In sheet 3, it should be column 4. So we're going to do all these examples, again, with a timestamp, but you could replace the timestamp with a dropdown or any of the codes you see in my channel or in the hundreds of channels or online blogs where you'll find Google Apps Script snippets. Okay, I know you love it, but before we begin, I want to invite you to the Patreon page so you can download the template or just subscribing to the channel if you like my content to find new videos every week. Thank you so much, especially to my Patreons. So let's begin. The first thing we're going to do is to create a new Google Sheet with sheets.new. Let's call this Choose Your Sheets. Remember, this will work for a dropdown, this will work for a timestamp, this will work for many of the things we've done in the past in other videos. This will work. So I'm going to do very simple, just a timestamp, so I don't waste a lot of time in showing you how to do a drop-down that I've done this in multiple other videos. So first, I'm going to do a bit of zoom out, extensions, AppScript, and we're just going to do a timestamp, okay? Because the idea of the video today is how to make sure that you can execute any of your codes in multiple sheets, in 1, in 2, in all but 1, in all but 2. So we're going to call this timestamp in multiple sheets. So all of these codes are going to be executed by an onEdit. So I'm going to create an onEdit function. This is what is called. This is called a simple trigger. And I'm going to put my function, however you have called it, I'm going to put it inside. So it always works when I'm editing something. You need to be careful with the onEdits, because if you are calling an external service, for example, you are connecting with another sheet, for example, if you are sending an email, for example, if you are connecting with a Google Forms, with a calendar or anything like that, this won't work, and you would need to do it through an installable trigger, creating it here in the trigger section. Okay, so when there are simple things, for example, a drop down, a timestamp, where you don't need to call any external services, onEdit will do perfectly. Okay, so the first thing you need to do when you do an onEdit is to know where you are standing by. Where is the user? In which sheet and in which range? Because you don't want to do the timestamp in column A, B, C, D. Maybe you just want to do it when the user is here in E and puts the user and says Maria, and then the time will come here at the right. So it will only apply in the column E, for example, that in numbers is column number 5. So I need to know where the user is. There are 2 ways of doing this. The first one is with an event here, an argument that only works with triggers, for example, when you use an onEdit. But I'm not such a fan. Maybe I'm wasting more lines, but I like to do it with the following line. I'm going to create a variable called active range, and the active range will be spreadsheet app dot get active range. That's it. From this active range, I can get a lot of information. For example, I could get the column with this get column method. So now I can compare and see if my user is in column 4, 3, 5, 8, 1, or whichever. And we're going to call this active column. Also, I may want to know the active row. Why? Because maybe I have a header here and I don't want the code to trigger when I'm at row number 1. So it may be useful to know in which row am I. This will be the same active range dot not get column but get row. Another thing I may need is the sheet. So it's as easy as doing active range dot get sheet. And let's call this active sheet. Again, you don't need to store everything in variables, but given that you're learning, I find it that it's better to name everything so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But in many codes, you will see that not everything is in its own variable. Normally, the variable is used when you're going to use this variable in more than 2 places. Other thing I may need is the name of the sheet, because this sheet is just the object sheet that may be useful. But to know in which sheet am I may need the name of the sheet. So name active sheet. And for that, I'm going to go to my active sheet object and look for the method getName. Finally, another thing I may need is the value. So active value is nothing more but active range, and let's get the value from the active range. With these 6 things, normally I will be able to get almost all information I need. Now here is where it gets cool. Here I'm going to use a conditional, an if, and here is where I can say when do I want my code, anything I want, my drop down, my timestamp, my delete, whatever I'm going to do to copy to perform. So here I'm going to say actions I want to do, and here I'm going to say conditions, where, when do I want my actions to occur. Before doing anything, I'm going to put just any condition, if true. And I'm going to do my action. Let's do a timestamp. The timestamp will be, in my case, this is very specific for a timestamp. You don't need to do this. Maybe here you're just going to paste your dropdown or whatever you want to put. Active range dot offset. I'm going to move it 0 rows and 1 column to the right. And there I'm going to set the value, and we're going to put, that's it. That's a very, very simple timestamp. So if I leave it as it is without any condition, because this condition will always be true. So if I do write anything here, I'm going to get my timestamp, and if I write anything here, I'm going to get my timestamp, and if I create a new sheet and I write anything here, I'm going to have my timestamp. So it will work everywhere, and I don't want it to work everywhere. Okay, so the first condition will be the column, so that my active column equals to 5. Let's save and let's try to run it again. So if I try to run it in any sheet but here, it doesn't work. But if I go to my column number 5, then it will work. But if I go to number 4, it won't work. So this is the first condition you may want to use. The second condition will be the row, because I don't want it to be in row number 1. So I could say the condition that it has to be different than 1, or it is greater than 1. Any or both will work. So the way to combine conditions is with a logical operator. Here we're going to use the AND operator. That means that both conditions need to be true. So here, the second condition will be that active row needs to be greater than 1. Let's save. And here, again, if I do anything here, it won't work because I'm not in the specified column. If I go here, it will work because I'm in the column 5. If I go to the row 1 and by mistake I write something there, it won't change anything because I told it not to work in row 1, but in row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to whatever. And it still works in any of the sheets. So here is where the nice thing comes. You could also put something related to the value, that the value needs to be not empty, for example. So another condition may be that the active value is different from nothing. Why? Because maybe if I'm here in number 5 and I delete something, I don't want it to write something, only when I write. So this is a third condition. And the final condition, that is the one that interests us today, is the name of the sheet. So I'm going to say that the name of the active sheet equals to, let's say we only want to work in sheet 1. So let's put sheet 1. This will be my last condition. Let's save. And let's try to do it in sheet 2. It won't work. Let's try to do it in sheet 3. It won't work. Let's try to do it in sheet 1. It will work because I only told it to write it in sheet 1. So the question after 10 minutes that you have asked is, how do I do it in multiple sheets? So I already answered the question for all sheets. If you want it to work in all sheets, you're just going to remove this condition. If I remove this condition, it will work in all sheets. This is option number 1. Scenario number 2 is that it will only work in one sheet. In this case, sheet 1. Scenario number 3, I want it to work in other sheet. So you will say, okay, so let's do this other condition. That sheet, the name of the sheet is sheet 2. So you will say, and name of the active sheet is sheet 2. What do you say? Is this going to work or not? Let's save. And you would say, okay, so it should work here in sheet 1, but it is not working. Sheet 2, it is not working. And you say, okay, we have an error. You go to execution and there is no error. These are the most difficult errors to find because there is no error. It's just a logic error and it's never entering your conditional. Why? Because it's a matter of the logical operators. As I told you, you need to always combine your conditions with logical operators. However, you shouldn't always combine it with the AND, because the AND means that this needs to be true, 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 and this needs to be true. In these 3, we don't have a problem because the 3 are separate conditions, don't depend on each other. One doesn't reject the other. So it can be column 5, it can be a row 2 or 3 or whatever, and the active value could be whatever. However, when you look at these 2 conditions, you start to notice something weird. Is that you have this first condition that says the name active sheet is equal to sheet 1. And then you said the name active sheet is sheet number 2. And then you say, okay, it doesn't make sense that this is an AND condition because there is no scenario where the name of the sheet will be sheet 1 and at the same time the name of the sheet will be sheet 2. This is why here I won't use the ampersand or the AND logical operator, but the OR, because I'm saying or the name of the sheet is either sheet 1 or sheet 2. Let's save and let's try it one more time. So again, here in my column 5, it works. If I go to sheet 3, it won't work. If I go to sheet 1, it will work. Okay, just one advice if you have many conditions is to group the similar conditions, especially when you have AND conditions and OR conditions. I would group the OR conditions inside parentheses so it's clear for the code that first it will look at any of these 2 conditions and then it will look for the other condition. Just a matter of priority. Scenario number 4. If you have more than 2 sheets, then you could do the same. here. You could do sheet 1 or sheet 2 or sheet 3, or if you want 100, you can do 100, but it will be a bit excessive. There's a better way of doing it. Actually, I'm going to format this and copy it. So if you are a Patreon member and you're going to copy the code, you have the two possibilities. So I'm going to call this timestamp in multiple sheets. 2 sheets. No, actually in 2 sheets. This one will be in 1 sheet. And I will remove this other condition we just did. And I'm going to do other that is in all sheets. You should know what to do there. Just remove the condition that refers to the sheet. That's it. Timestamp in all sheets. Okay, so we have 3 possibilities. Timestamp in all sheets, timestamp in 1 sheet, timestamp in 2 sheets. Again, this I call it here timestamp, but it could be for you drop down or whatever. Now I have in 2 sheets. If it were in 3 sheets, again, you just only need to copy this and change it for the name of the other sheet. But what about if you have 10 sheets and you only want all but 1? So let's copy this. Let's paste it here. And let's say that I want in all but sheet 1 or in all but sheet 3, for example. So what I'm going to do is very, very simple. I'm going to remove this condition. I'm going to remove this parenthesis, and I'm going to say that the name of the active sheet is not sheet 3, different from sheet 3. So right now I have sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, and let's save, and let's make sure, let's call this timestamp in all but 1 sheet. And let's make sure that we have it here. Let's save, and it should work in all but in sheet 3. So if I do here, it works. If I do here, sheet 2, it works. If I go to sheet 3, it doesn't work. But if I add a new sheet 4 and I try it here, it will work. Okay, so this is another scenario where it's not that it only goes in 1 sheet, but it goes in all but 1, except 1. And if I want in all except 2 or except 3, it's similar to what we did before, but in this case, given the logic, I don't need to do it with an OR. I will also do it with an AND. Why? I don't think I'm apt to explain logic to you in 15 minutes, but the thing is here, when it's not, then the AND will work, because it's like I'm saying, okay, let's start converting these 2 phrases. So my active column should be 5 and my active row should be greater than 1 and my active value should be not empty and my active sheet should be not the 3 and my active sheet should be not a 4, for example. So this, in the case where I'm doing more than 1 exception, the AND will work perfectly, because it shouldn't be 3, it shouldn't be 4, and it shouldn't be 5, and it shouldn't be 6. I hope it's clear. Again, I'm not the best to explain these logic things, but I hope it's clear. So let's save it, and let's use this one. Timestamp in all but 2 sheets. Let's save, and let's try it out. So I can create a lot of sheets, and in theory it won't only not work in 3 and 4. So if I go to 5 and write something, it should work. Let's see, here I'm in column 4, it should be column 5. It works. In sheet 6, it works, but if I go to sheet 4, it won't work, and in sheet 3, it won't work. And if you want more to be all but 3 sheets, then again, just add the condition. So I have 5 scenarios for you. I'm going to do one last one. I'm going to copy this down here, and I'm going to say timestamp in specific sheets. So here you could be much more specific without having, let's say you have 100 sheets. And from the 100 sheets, you want to only to apply in 20 of the 100 sheets. So you don't want to go and do this and 20 times. I'm going to show you another method that's really nice. So we're going to create an array that is called sheets to apply. It will be an array where you're going to list the names of the sheets where you want your code to apply. Let's say that in this case, I want to apply in sheet 1, sheet 5, and sheet 7. So let's write the names here. Sheet 1, sheet 5, and sheet 7. So what I want to do is to look for the sheet, the active sheet in this array. So for this, we're going to do sheets to apply dot index of, and we're going to look for the name of the active sheet there. If it finds it, then it will return a number, 0, 1, or 2. If it doesn't find it, it will return -1. So let's call this search sheet. So my condition will be, instead of a specific sheet, will be that search sheet is greater than -1. That's it, because if it's greater than -1, it means that the name of the active sheet was found in this range. Okay, you could even remove this range and put it here on top, or even outside your function, it would still work. So let's save. And now remember, 1, 5, and 7, I'm going to copy these to my onEdit. 1, 5, and 7. Let's save. So let's go to 1. Perfect. Let's go to 2. Perfect. It doesn't work. Let's go to 5. Excellent. It works. Let's go to 6. It shouldn't work. And let's go to 7, where it is working. So it's really cool because you don't need to do all the conditions. You just need to have an array with the sheets you want to apply your code. Of course, this has one major flaw, and is that all your sheets, the column needs to be number 5. We could do another project where each sheet could have its column. Actually, we could do it today. Another possibility is to do timestamp, but in specific sheets. Very similar to this one, timestamp, but in specific sheets. So again, we have 3 sheets where it won't work. In the other case, it will work only in these 3 sheets. In this other case, it won't work. It will work in all the sheets, but in these 3 ones. So the only thing we need to do is that search sheet should be -1. This means that it didn't find 1, it didn't find 5, it didn't find 7. So it will work in all but in these 3. So let's copy again this function. Let's save it. And let's go to number 1. Now it shouldn't work in number 1. But if I go to 3, it should work in 3 because it's not 1, it's not 5, it's not 7. If I go to 5, it shouldn't work in 5. In 4, it should work. In 7, it shouldn't work. The last thing will be, I'm going to copy this of timestamp in specific sheets. And I will do timestamp in a specific sheet and specific columns. What a name. So what I'm going to do here is that not only I'm going to say which are the sheets where it can apply, but I also give a different column in each sheet. For example, I will say, okay, first let's apply to sheet 1, but in sheet 1, the column will be column 1. Now in sheet 5, the column should be column 5. Let's be pretty original. And in sheet 7, the column should be this column 7. Okay, so I'm doing an array of arrays. So here I'm going to do an extra step. In order for this index of to work, I'm going to create a list of sheets using the sheets to apply array and using the map method, where I'm just going to extract this, and this very easily. I'm going to say for each row, let's extract the first element. So this will bring the same thing I had before, this. And now I can do, instead of doing the index of, because the index of I need to do it to a simple list. But this is not a simple list, this is a bi-dimensional array, okay? So here it won't work. This is why I need to do this first operation before. And now I'm not going to do the index of to the sheets to apply, but to my list of sheets. Okay, now I have the search sheet, and the search sheet will be a number, will be 0 in this case, 1 or 2. Why do I need this index? Because I need to extract the column. So here my active column won't be 5, but will be sheets to apply. In which element? In the element as search sheet says. Maybe I could change this search sheet and call it sheet index or whatever. You may notice that I did it with this rename symbol, so I changed it here, here, and here, wherever I had the other name. So now the final thing is that now with these sheets to apply sheet index, I'm taking this. For example, if I was in sheet 1, it will extract this, but actually I need the second element, the column. So this is why here I'm going to put a number 1. Why 1 and not 2? Because in arrays, the first element always is number 0. So here it will be 0 and here it will be 1. Now it should work. Not only for the sheets as say, but I could select a different column to apply my drop down, my timestamp, whatever, for each different sheet. So let's save. And you could have more arguments. For example, you have a triple drop down or whatever. You could have not only the row, the column, but you could have more and more things. You could make this as complex as you want. What I need to do before testing it is to copy this large named function, paste it here, save it, and now we can test it. Let's go here and let's begin in column 5 and see if it works. So you're in sheet 1, it should work in sheet 1, but it should work in sheet 1 in column 1. Perfect. In sheet 2, it shouldn't work neither in the 1, neither in 5, neither in nowhere. Okay? In sheet, what was the other one? In sheet 5, it should work not in 3, not in 1, not in 7, but only in 5. And in sheet 7, it shouldn't work in 1, it shouldn't work in 3, it shouldn't work in 5, it only should work in 7. So now you have a very flexible code that then you can, here in the actions I want to do, paste whatever you want. You can use from my other videos, you can use the drop down, you can use sending an email, whatever you want. Be careful with sending an email. It's a bad example because here it won't work the onEdit. You need to do trigger. So I'm going to minimize all these functions. I'm going to say fold all, and here I'm going to leave you with all these scenarios. Do the timestamp in just one sheet, in all the sheets, in 2 sheets, in all but 1 sheet, in all but 2 or 3 or 4 sheets, in the specific sheets that you're going to put in an array, in all but the specific sheets you put in the array, and finally, the cherry on top of the cake is specific sheets with each sheet with its specific column. My tongue is twirling. So this is it. I hope you like it. I hope you apply it to your projects and let me know what works and what does. I hope you liked it. I hope you use it in your projects. And if you like it, you can just subscribe to the channel or subscribe to the Patreon page where you can copy all of these functions and then use it in your projects. Thank you so much, especially to my Patreons, and see you next time.